Hello everybody, Maven here, and Season 22 is right around the corner and next Tuesday's reset, so I thought I'd do this video to recap all of the changes coming to the game. There's a lot of sandbox and ability changes to exotic weapons and armor, and a lot of new things being added. So this is going to be the one-stop shop to go over everything. So let's get to it. Don't forget to drop a like, and I hope you enjoy. So I'm just gonna rapid fire everything off because we have a lot to get to. So sniper rifles are getting a 10% damage buff in PvE, and I couldn't for the life of me find the TWID in which they said this, but I know they did. I'm about 90% sure this is a thing. Ascendant materials and enhancement prisms are getting a cap upgrade. We will now have the long-awaited ability to select favorites on things like shaders and emotes. This is a huge quality of life improvement for those of us who have hundreds of these items. The Exotic Mission Weekly Rotator will be launching with these three missions: Presage, Vox Obscura, and Operation Seraph's Shield, with these loot tables here, just in case you're a newer player and didn't yet get to finish the patterns for all these weapons. Here is a list of new weapons coming to Season 22, and I'll give a little bit of commentary on some of them. So first of all, I find it strange that strikes are getting both a solar precision bow and a solar sniper rifle, because we already have those from strikes, the solar Azume and the solar strident whistle. So we're just getting repeat archetypes. And I find it strange that they're giving us a void machine gun and gambit, because how is it possibly going to be better than commemoration, corrective measure, or retrofit escapade? So I have no idea how it's going to compete, but we'll have to wait and see. And thank goodness they're giving us back the Igneous Hammer. A lot of us didn't get the chance to get the god roll of it because it was only here for a couple seasons. I managed to get the PvE god roll, but I still need to get that PvP god roll. And finally, the Warden's Law is pretty awesome that that's coming back, because moving on to this next little slide here, it says that it's going to be the first ever 2 burst. Now, if you haven't seen the Warden's Law before, like the Sunset version, it would actually fire 2 bullets in one single shot. It wasn't a burst. They're saying here that it's a burst. So it makes me think it's gonna be like the Crimson, but like a 2 burst, like 1 bullet after the other, so that it doesn't whiff like it used to. So I'm very excited to see what they're gonna do with that. And speaking of hand cannons, they're getting these buffs here. Nice little reload buff and a huge damage buff. This is definitely gonna make hand cannons feel a lot more viable than they used to. Strand is gonna get some new aspects. We got Whirling Maelstrom for Hunter, Banner of War for Titans, and Weave Walk for Warlocks. The Wanderer aspect is getting some buffs, but to be honest with you, I've never used it, so I don't really have much to say about it. The Threaded Spectre aspect is getting some buffs as well. The main one here for me personally is that allied players no longer have reticle magnetism toward the Threaded Spectre, because what I like to do with it in Crucible is just put up the dummy and then head glitch behind it, but then it's annoying that your reticle constantly moves towards the dummy rather than the target you're trying to shoot. So that's huge. And then the Silk Strike Super is getting a little bit of a buff as well to make it more user-friendly. Now, every piece of Strand subtext is getting a buff besides Suspend. Suspend is actually getting a huge nerf. So they are drastically decreasing the Suspend duration across the board because it was pretty broken. It made Grandmaster Nightfalls way too easy. But everything else in Strand is getting a big buff, so Threadling's going to do 30% more damage, Tangles cool down quicker, and Severed enemies deal 10% less damage than before. And some Strand fragments are getting some reworks as well. Thread of Mine is the one that generates class ability when you defeat a suspended target, and they're going to lessen the degree of that, so that kind of sucks. Thread of Generation is the one that generates grenade energy when you deal damage, and they are going to reduce the potency of that because it was a little bit broken. Thread of Propagation grants strength, and Thread of Continuity doesn't, so they just traded places. Thread of Wisdom could be potentially broken. I feel like this is going to be the next game-breaking thing. It says it no longer requires a precision kill to activate. So defeating a suspended target in general creates an orb of power. That could be broken with Weaver's Trance. However, we don't know yet if there is going to be a cooldown timer for this. If there's not, then that is going to be broken. Thread of Isolation is going to be a little bit easier to proc, and Thread of Rebirth is going to increase the amount of threadlinks you generate based on the tier of enemy. So that's just going to make Strand feel better in general. We are getting this brand new Vex-themed Crucible map, and it looks cool, but I feel like it's just going to be Disjunction 2.0. Just looking at the picture here, it looks like it's going to be very snipe heavy, and also doesn't really look ape-worthy because of the large gaps. And we're getting these 2 new Crucible game modes here. Relic is looking like it's going to be Team Scorched 2.0, so in other words, nobody's really going to play that unless it's for a seasonal challenge. And then Checkmate seems a little bit more interesting. It's a game mode where you don't spawn with special ammo, ability cooldowns are slower, and players have increased health. So it's going to be focused on gunplay. So I'm pretty sure the meta for Checkmate is just going to be Scout SMG or Scout Sidearm. Zoom is finally getting nerfed. So looking at this chart, based based on my potato brain understanding, is that rangefinder and zoom will have no impact on your range. It's just across the board, any given archetype has its own base ADS scaler, and they'll only go to a certain limit regardless of the zoom stat. So let me know in the comments if I'm right about that or if that's completely wrong. Will zoom still have an impact on range? Who knows? I'm sure many YouTubers will test it out. Titans are getting nerfed in PvP. Barricade cooldowns will be slowed and the barricade's health is reduced. And Thunder Crash is getting a slowed cooldown and Knockout's getting a damage reduction. To be honest with you, I do not believe this is enough to nerf Titans. I believe they will still be the meta because there's still going to be barricades everywhere. They're still going to be relatively tanky and they still make you one shot when you stub your toe on them. Thunder Crash is only getting a 56-second increase in cooldown time, so they're still going to get it in any Trials game. And the damage of Knockout wasn't the problem, it was the health regen. So yeah, I think Titans are still going to be broken. Monte Carlo's finally getting an exotic catalyst. Now analyzing the footage here, the base damage of the shots of it do 1,066 damage, and then the glaive strike does 116,000. So relative to the base damage of the shots, that is a crazy amount of damage. So what I think it's going to do is that glaive stab does increase damage based on the amount of Markov chain stacks you have. And it hits as hard as a rocket launcher. I think it's going to be very good. A bunch of exotic armor is getting reworked, so we're going to start off with the Hunter here. Knucklehead Radar is basically inheriting the functions of the Foe Tracer because the Foe Tracer is getting a rework. Foe Tracer is going to make it so when you deal damage with an ability and you kill an enemy with a weapon matching your subclass damage type, it's going to make an elemental pickup from your subclass. I think that could potentially be broken with a lot of things. We'll have to wait and explore what it can do. And Lucky Raspberry is too much to read right now, and most people may see it as a nerf, but I see it as a buff. Because before, when I would throw my nade and it wouldn't chain enough, I'd get no grenade energy back. But now, regardless of how many targets you chain or hit at all, you're getting some grenade energy back regardless. So it's going to be a lot more consistent and also stuns overloads. And the Renewal Grasp losing its cooldown penalty is awesome, and I can finally use it in GMs again because it was very strong. And Titan is getting a few exotic reworks to match the Path of the Burning Steps ability because this season we got the change to the Eternal Warrior to match what the Path of Burning Steps did except for Arc, but then we're getting the Doom Fangs for Void and the Icefall Mantles for Stasis. And they're all going to obtain a way to immediately grant its tier 4 damage buff bonus, which is 25% extra damage, by the way. So for the Icefall Mantle, all you have to do is activate your class ability, so you can do your Icefall Mantle ability and immediately deactivate it, and you just get that tier 4 damage bonus off the bat, so that's awesome. And Doomfang Pauldrons, all you gotta do is get a Void Melee kill, which should be pretty easy. And with Path of Burning Steps, all you gotta do is get a Solar Grenade kill, again, very easy. And Eternal Warrior is when your Fist of Havoc ends, you get 30 seconds of a tier 4 damage buff. But still, nobody's gonna use Fist of Havoc in PvE, so I think it's a dead exotic still. And the ACDO feedback fence seems interesting. When you take damage now, you jolt targets that touched you. So that's going to be pretty cool. You don't have to be on arc to jolt things. And also, when you punch things, you get armor charge for that. That could make some interesting interactions. And you deal more damage to the enemies that punch you based on the amount of armor charge stacks you have. And Hall of Fire Heart, we do not yet know exactly what it's going to do. It just says it's going to allow you to build more into sunspots, which I think isn't too exciting because we already have the Phoenix Cradle. And the Warlock exotic armor updates seem pretty exciting. Astrocyte Verse makes it so when you blink near targets, they become volatile, and when you blink during your Nova Warp Super, it doesn't consume super energy. So you're going to be able to blink over large gaps. And Geomags now make it so when you pick up an Ionic Trace, it gives you extra super energy. And I really hope that it's actually a good amount of super energy and not something underwhelming. And Wings of Sacred Dawn seems like niche speedrun potential, because while you're airborne, your solar weapons will reload themselves after kills. And that could be interesting with Gallarhorn if you're doing like a speedrun that needs some heavy ad clear. Bows are getting a reload speed buff from 0.5 seconds to 0.3 seconds, and that's huge. So we're going to be able to output 20% more arrows than we did before. That is a huge DPS buff. Aggressive sidearms, such as the Forgiveness, are getting a damage nerf in PvP from a base of 32 down to 30. This makes it so that you can no longer 3 burst to the body, and that's kind of disappointing. Swords are getting a massive rework. Now go ahead and pause if you want to read this, because personally, I don't even know how to explain it. I don't even know what they're talking about. I don't use swords unless it's to Eager Edge Skate, so this doesn't really apply to me. The Two-Tailed Fox Catalyst is now going to be a 3-shot burst instead of a 2 burst, with the third rocket coming out with the second one, because that was causing some issues. But this makes me think that it's going to be overall a DPS decrease since the burst is going to take a little bit longer. The Lemon Arc is finally getting nerfed. It's going to do the precision and body shot damage of a lightweight bow like it always should have, and the poison ticks on it are getting almost halved. However, I still think it's going to be broken because you can still 2-tap any resilience levels even if you hit double bodies. But to compensate for acting as a lightweight now and getting that draw time decrease, they're increasing the poison damage in PvE by 50%, and they said this is going to be an overall damage increase in PvE. So pair that with that draw time, I think the Lemon Arc is going to feel amazing in PvE. And I'm definitely going to have to do some testing on this one. The Vex Mythic class is going to lose 30 RPM, but it's going to do 25% more damage against minors and majors. So overall, that's probably going to be a nice little damage increase, especially in the linear fusion mode. The Touch of Malice is getting a plethora of buffs. They more than double the amount of health you get back with Touch of Mercy, but it's going to act similar to Unrelenting. You can no longer die to self-damage with it. They increase the damage of the final round by 20%, and it can stun unstoppable champions. So it seems like it's going to be awesome, but I still think nobody's going to use it. And I even think that Outbreak Perfected will still probably out-damage it against raid bosses. But there's definitely some testing that needs to be done. The Cloud Strike is finally getting nerfed. They're reducing the lethal kill distance. I believe they said it was from like 5 meters down to 3 meters. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't think that's enough to knock it out of the meta. I think everyone's still going to be using it. In all honesty, I don't feel it should be able to kill players. It should probably deal like 130 damage to other players nearby, but not really kill them. And at that point, I think it would be balanced enough to where people would start using other snipers. The Wicked Implement is getting a few different buffs here, including the Headstone perk. They are deprecating resonant and harmonic alloys for weapon crafting, so that's awesome. And they're now adding a system to where you can spend Glimmer and Enhancement cores to now buy crafted weapon levels. That is a nice quality of life improvement. I just hope it's not too pricey. And the most devastating news of the day is that double specials are now nerfed. You will no longer generate more heavy ammo when running double specials. But I think that it's still going to be the meta regardless, but people might consider using an exotic primary now. But the main thing about this is that it really kills machine guns. Because the only reason we could use machine guns is because of double specials. So we can keep feeding into our machine gun to use it as basically a primary. But now I think the only viable machine gun is the Commemoration after this nerf. Because we can swap off to our exotic primary and use that for a while we let Reconstruction overflow our Commemoration. But I think all other machine guns are now killed. A plethora of perks are getting reworks. So Bipod, reduce the damage penalty from 40% to 25%. So that's awesome. So bipod launchers can now output more total damage than rocket launchers without bipod. However, it's still going to be a huge DPS decrease. But maybe one day we'll get a rocket with bipod in the left side column so we can have a damage perk in the right side column, and that would be awesome. Envious Assassin no longer has an invisible time limit between kills to activate the perk. So I don't really know what that's going to do. If I get a triple kill, is that just automatically going to overflow my cold comfort to 3 rockets in the mag? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Under Over's getting a big damage increase to all types of enemy shields. However, I still think it's too niche of a perk to ever want to use. Under Pressure is a perk that we were all fearing the worst for. They're just reducing the accuracy cone scaler from 0.5 to 0.75. But at the end of the day, it still grants a bunch of stability and still grants some accuracy, so I still think it's going to be a very strong perk. Shoot to Loot is a little bit awkwardly worded here. I don't really know what they mean by that first line of text, but explosive damage now works with the Orbs of Power, so that's cool. Valiant Charge now deactivates after the initial sword swing, so can we no longer skate over the Vex Milk Lake? I don't know. Ambush is still a perk that nobody uses. Explosive Light, they fixed a bug, and Chill Clip got a huge nerf. They reduced the slow stacks down from 60 to 40, so the Riptide can no longer 2-tap freeze things. So Rip the Riptide, it's no longer going to be a reliable option for barrier champions, and it's going to be decent for unstops, but not great. And it's still going to be very good for overloads at least. So the Riptide's not completely dead. It'll still be fine, but it's definitely losing a lot here. And Wolfpack rounds will no longer trigger Chill Clip, so rest in peace Bump in the Night meta, which was never really meta, but even if it was a little bit, its hopes and dreams are now crushed. So there you have it. your one-stop shop for Season 22 reminders. If there's anything you needed to remember for Tuesday's reset, you got it all here in one video. So that about wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to hit the like button and drop a comment because that really helps out the algorithm and the video's performance, so I greatly appreciate it. And if you are new here, consider subscribing. We got a lot of spicy content on the way for Season 22. Pretty much all of these Season 22 changes that we talked about in this video, we will be testing here on the channel, and there's a lot of builds on the way with these updated exotic armor pieces as well, so look forward to that. So thank you for watching, and with that, I'll catch you in Season 22. See you later.